This is our Swiss buttercream we're going to make for a frosting. And the first step is to add our egg whites, nice and clean, into our sugar. You can do this right into the mixing bowl, so it's one less dish that you have to wash. And I'm just gonna stir this up. I do not wanna whisk this because I don't wanna create too many bubbles, but I do wanna make sure that I don't have any undissolved sugar at the bottom here. We're gonna place this over a bain-marie in a minute to be able to dissolve the sugar and bring the temperature of this egg mixture up to about 145 to 150 degrees. So just stir this gently and continue to stir as it's heating over the bain-marie to really dissolve all of that sugar. I'm gonna also add a pinch of salt to help bring the flavor out and put this over a bain-marie. I have this on the lowest heat possible, and I just want to continue to stir so that I don't have any undissolved sugar that's stuck on the side of the bowl here. If that does not get dissolved in the mixture, you will end up with a grainy textured meringue, which in turn will end up with a grainy textured buttercream. So we want this to be as smooth as possible. So I'm just going to continue to stir them on the absolute lowest heat on my stove with the water underneath the bowl inside of here. And I'm just placing my mixing bowl right on top. So make sure that it is somewhat immersed, the bottom is somewhat immersed in the pot, not touching the water, and just continue to stir. At first this will be very thick and almost very gelatinous looking, and then it will start to thin out. Once that sugar dissolves, it will become much more liquid. I've been stirring the meringue mixture for about 10 minutes, and you can see it getting a little bit looser, and I'm really paying attention to keeping the sides all scraped down into there so I don't have any of that undissolved sugar. And I want it to get to, like I said, about 145, 150 degrees, and I'm about 110 at the moment. So we're getting closer, but I'm gonna let this keep going and stirring consistently. Otherwise, you run the risk of cooking those egg whites, and we don't wanna do that. So I took a final temperature of my egg whites and sugar, and it's just at 150, so this is perfect. The best way to tell if you're done is by temperature, but you can also judge it by texture, and you can put your fingers in there, make sure they're clean because we don't want any residual fat, and it should be completely smooth. You should not have any graininess from any unmelted sugar. So simply what I want to do now is take my bowl and place it on my stand mixer, fitted with a whip. Again, making sure that your hands are clean, that all your utensils are clean, and we're going to whip this on high for, it really just depends on the temperature of your room, but what we're looking for is a stiff peak. So we're gonna let this go. It's extremely hot at the bottom. It will actually let it go until it cools down. So we'll come periodically and see the changes that it's having. Turn it on high and just let it go. The bottom of the mixer is still very warm. You can see it's getting really light and fluffy. But I want to keep it on high and let it go until I actually can feel it cool on the bottom of the mixer. We'll keep getting stiffer and stiffer as you go. I'm going to turn the mixer off. It is slightly warm on the bottom still, but we're definitely cooling down. And I want to scrape the sides just to make sure that all of that meringue gets evenly distributed on the sides there. And before we add the butter, I want to explain why it's so important that we pay attention to the temperature. If my butter is room temperature and my meringue is warm, you're going to have a liquid, loose buttercream. We don't want that. We want it to tighten up. So it's really important that my meringue mixture is slightly warm, but mostly on the cool side, and adding cold butter and whipping it on high so that you really distribute that butter evenly and there are no chunks. So it's important that this isn't too warm to melt the butter, and it's also important that our butter stays really cool so that it can really like mix into the meringue very, very well. We are going to mix it on high. You don't want it on low speed. I'm going to let this go for about 3 more minutes and then we'll start adding the butter. So my meringue is finished and I'm ready to add in my butter. I've already cubed it and I've kept it in the refrigerator the entire time. So while this mixture is on high, I'm going to add in about 2-3 ounces at a time of the cubed butter, adding it right into the mix. Let this process take a little while. If you go too fast, there's too many chunks of butter in there that's not getting mixed in very well. So this process should take about 5 minutes to add in your butter. We'll just continue until all the butter is added. At one point it might start to look slightly loose, and that could just be a temperature issue, but please be patient and wait till the very last handful of butter that you add, and you'll see that meringue mixture tighten up. I'm about halfway through the process of adding my butter, and what I want to do now is stop the machine and just scrape the sides, pushing it into the center. And this is just to make sure that that outside edge of meringue gets mixed in very evenly along with the rest of it. It's definitely looser than when I started, but I promise you it will tighten up towards the end. So once that's mixed down in there, then go ahead and turn the machine back on and continue adding the butter. At this point, I'd love for you to see how it does kind of come together at the very end. I have about 4 more cubes of butter to add, and you can see it already tightening up. If yours does not do this, you want to place it in the refrigerator for about 20-30 minutes, and then you can come back and tighten it up again by putting it on high in the mixer. So now it slightly looks a little curdled, but it will actually smooth itself out the longer you mix it. So I have 2 more pieces. This is looking great. Really allow it enough time to mix in that butter so that it is completely smooth buttercream. The very last step to this of ingredients is adding our flavoring. So this is where you can add any compound flavoring or just purely vanilla extract. I'm going to stop the machine, scrape the sides again, and then add my vanilla and let it whip on high for a few more minutes. And then we're going to transfer to the paddle. That will help smooth it out. It looks very uneven and kind of chunky at this point, but the paddle will give it a really smooth, glossy texture, which is what we're looking for in order to spread our buttercream properly. So I still see there are some chunks of butter and I definitely want to mix that out. So I'm going to add in my vanilla and turn it on high. Give it ample time to really mix it. Buttercream is thick and all the butter is mixed in well, we're going to transfer to a paddle, and this will help smooth out any of the imperfections and give you a beautiful buttercream to be able to spread or pipe evenly. We want to do this actually on very low, and this will help push any of those bubbles out, and we'll leave this on very, very low speed until you're ready to ice your cake. If you've ever iced or piped buttercream before and have had problems because of the air pockets in there, this is the trick to be able to remove those air pockets. So, like I said, you want to stop the machine and you can really see the smooth texture of this. The longer you let it go, the smoother it will be, but it's super creamy. It will go on very easily onto your cake or piping onto cupcakes or whatever you're decorating with. So here is our Swiss buttercream.